there it is, and a red dot.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Hodgson and Garry Goff.
Hi.
Gary's behind the camera today. We're at the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, home to the most touchable warbirds in Texas. Today we are in Benbrook, and we are at the corner of West Cosby Street and Vernon Castle Avenue. We are here behind me is the Vernon Castle Memorial, which is dedicated to Captain Vernon Castle, who died here at Caruthers Field on February 15th of 1918. And we're going to talk about Vernon Castle a little bit. Vernon Castle and Irene Castle were rock stars of the 19 teens. They were dancers. They brought the foxtrot here. They brought the two-step and the waltz and a number of others. And they were world-renowned for their dancing. When the war started, Vernon, being a British person, wanted to get involved, and he wanted to fly. But everybody was telling him, no, you're too important, you shouldn't go do that, you shouldn't endanger yourself. But Vernon decided to do it anyway, so here in the United States, he took flying lessons, I think it was in New Jersey, and then went to England and became part of the RAF in England. He ended up flying 300 combat missions in World War I, which Garry and I were talking about earlier. It's just kind of astonishing when pilots were referred to as 20-minuters, that he actually had 300 combat missions and had 2 kills of German airplanes. We're on a public street here, so we may get a little noise from time to time.
I mean, you just imagine that you're going airborne 300 times in a combat zone, getting shot at, and the fact that you made it 300 times is incredible for those of us who have flown in those kind of environments.
Well, and they were just in flying kites anyway, but
yeah.
he ended up with 2 kills. He got the Croix de Guerre and some other awards. And after his tour, they asked him what he wanted to do, and he said he wanted to come back to the States and be an instructor. And so they sent him here to, at the time it was referred to as Tolliver 3, of Camp Tolliver, which was all 3 of the airfields here. But we're going to move a little closer to the memorial so we can get away from the street noise just a little bit. But he came here to Camp Tolliver number 3, which became known as Caruthers Field, and it was also at one point referred to as Camp Benbrook at different times, depending on who was running the show here. But he was a commanding officer of one of the squadrons. And while he was here as a flight instructor, on February 15th of 1918, he was out with a student. Now, Vernon had a few issues.
Just a few.
As Garry and I were talking before, first of all, normally in these types of things in the jennies that they're flying, and you can see a little depiction of a jenny up on the top of the memorial, that the instructor flew in the back seat, the student was in the front seat. The safe seat was supposed to be the back seat, but Vernon liked to fly in the front seat. He also didn't like to wear a seatbelt.
He just didn't like rules.
He didn't like rules, and the other thing was he had a pet monkey named Jeffrey who went on every flight with him. The Castles were big animal people. They had dogs. They had all kinds of things. So at any rate, on that date, on February 15th of 1918, which is 103 years ago, he was out flying with a student. And Garry, you know the story a little bit, so go ahead and tell the people about the story.
And you're going to hear a bird chirping. The bird up there in the Jenny is in the seat that Vernon liked to sit in. Insane. And the fact that he's flying with a monkey, crazy. But anyway, he's coming in to land from what we understand. And as he's getting ready to land, he notices that there's an aircraft directly below him. He clips the tail as he's trying to do a go-around for some reason to do an implement maneuver, but about 70
Which is
feet.
a maneuver like this.
Yep, about 70, 75 feet of the ground, the aircraft stalled. And we all know that that's game over for him.
And it's in the front seat, he would have hit the engine. And it's a landing pattern. You do not have the speed or the energy to be able to do a maneuver where you're going from here and pulling up and trying to get up over the top. So he was probably pretty much dead from the start.
Yeah.
So he crashed here on this site, and that's the one thing. We're right near Carswell, or sorry, the JRB, so we're going to have F-35 noise and probably F-18 noise while we're here. but it was near here. This is public property, and that's why the memorial is here. I've got a map of the area of Benbrook that I'm going to show you, and we'll see if we can help you with this. So the red outline on this map is what the field actually looked like. And so right now we are at this point where my finger is. This is where the water tower is. This grayish area up on the top are the buildings for the airfields. All along here are the hangars. And this is along Cosby Street North, actually, is a road that goes kind of along between the field buildings and what would have been the hangars. So all of this area that we're on now would have been part of the airfield here in the area. No runways because
the tail draggers don't do well in a crosswind landing. So they have a big square field, so you're always landing in the wind.
So here's another
safety tip.
Yeah, here's another depiction, and this is of the airfield layout. Was at Hicks not too long ago, and this is essentially it's identical layout to Hicks. Here's the hangars along here, and this is what is West Cosby now. Right out here towards the end is an ammo building, the same kind of that I talked about at Hicks. That was the last thing that was remaining here, but it was knocked down to build a Walmart. One of the things, if you go to Google Earth and you look along Cosby Street where the hangars were, you will be able to see homes that are built on what appears to be an entire concrete lot. And what those are the foundations from some of the hangars. So some of that stuff is still here. And then over at the elementary school, there's some markers over there. We're not going to go there today, but we'll do that at another point in time. What I'm going to do is show you the airplane that Vernon was flying in at the time. So he was the commanding officer. He had an airplane that was designated for his specific use. So like most COs of most squadrons.
Right, you have your own specific aircraft.
So this is Vernon Castle. Castle, it says Castle, a famous dancer of the time, was killed in a fatal crash of Charlie 696 on 15 February 1918. It's a Curtiss JN4 Canadian Jenny C696 of the number 84 Canadian Training Squadron, the Royal Flying Corps Canada. And this was here in Benbrook, obviously. But you'll notice on his airplane, they had a castle on the tail. And that was the only airplane like that because this was his airplane.
Right.
So, and we've talked before about some of the differences on the Canadian Jenny. The tail is different. It's more of a rounded tail. And then you can see here, there's a connection between the ailerons on the top of the wing, which are normal for the U.S. Jennies, but they also attach to ailerons on the bottom wing. So they're far more maneuverable.
Far more maneuverable.
So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that are on here. This says, in memory of Vernon Blythe Castle, Captain, Royal Flying Corps, born May 2nd, 1987 in Norwich, Norfolk, England. Died on the 15th here. He was 30 years old in a plane crash near this site at Camp Benbrook while training American and Canadian flyers. And you can see this picture, and that's Jeffrey on his shoulders. Jeffrey the monkey who flew with him all the time and survived the crash.
I mean, can you imagine? You're a monkey and you're flying an airplane? Oh my gosh.
Well, I know
that's got to be weird, man.
I know a lot of monkeys who fly airplanes.
Yeah, don't we know?
We've got
and we've instructed a lot of monkeys.
Yes. We've got a couple of other things here that we're going to show you. This monument was with some repair work was done by a Boy Scout troop not too long ago.
They actually saved it because it was in disrepair, and thank God to the Boy Scout troops that actually put this thing back together again. Good on them.
Now, if you'll notice, this picture isn't exactly correct because this has got the regular Jenny tail. It does not have the connection between the two. So this is an American Jenny on here, the JN4, but it's a description, single engine airplane manufactured by Curtiss Airplane Motor Company, trainer, pilot and student, 190 horsepower Curtiss OX5 V8. Those were very famous engines at the time, very reliable. Max speed 75 miles an hour, range 2.25 hours, 155 miles, ceiling 11,000 feet.
Yeehaw.
And then the wingspan was 43, and the weight was 1,920 pounds, which happens to be the same weight, almost the same weight of my.
I was going to say
of my my Swift, and the length is 27 feet.
So it's 27 by 43.
So we've got an interesting poem here. I'll let Garry focus on that for a little bit, and it was by a lady named Ruth Finley. I'm not going to, well, I can read it. He said, he danced with death above the clouds, down some high pathway of the air, where earth and heaven mingle beneath. He danced with death. He danced so lightly, yet he saw the border vision of a world, made safe to crown each mountain peak, with freedmen's wind-kissed flags unfurled. He danced and gave his dearest gift, that little children still unborn may dance with gay, unshackled feet to tunes not piped by battle's horn. He danced with death for the last peace, and we who mark his gallant steps, we too in need, till our last breath will dance with death, by Ruth E. Finley in 1918. The ground here, as we look around, and Garry can kind of pan around, you'll notice in the homes, they're kind of 1940s, 1950s homes here, all ranch-sized style homes, but it's very flat. This was the airfield. We are on what was the airfield at the time. There are 3 silos that we passed on the way here, and if you ever look at pictures of the airfield, you will see off in the distance to the north 3 white silos. Those silos are here today, and those silos have been here since before 1800. In fact, the owners...
Before 1800.
Before 1800.
And the 1700s is when they were built.
Yeah, so the...
Insane.
So the owners aren't even sure exactly when they were built, but when they bought the property in the 1800s, they were there. They were built for silage. Well, when the airfield was established here, they painted the silos white. Initially, they painted them white because they didn't want pilots and students flying into them. But later on, because the terrain is so flat here, they became landmarks that were used all over. Now, the function of this airfield was not primary training. It was a more advanced training, and it was for observation and photo reconnaissance.
So the guys they'd already earned their wings, so to speak,
yes,
like we do today, and they're now in what we call in the Air Force an RTU, or Replacement Training Unit, and I don't know what they call it in the Marine Corps.
Well,
advanced training, I guess.
Advanced training.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned at Hicks was the aerial gunnery school with the 12,000 acres out there to use for aerial gunnery. Everman was the basic training and formation school, and then they would come over here and they would learn how to do observation and photo reconnaissance. Out towards the west, towards Weatherford, was the artillery ranges, and near there was 10 miles of trenches that were built for training purposes, for soldiers to go out and train. Well, the airplanes also used them to train for photo reconnaissance. So there were apparently tons and tons of photographs. There's very few that still remain, but there were tons and tons of photographs that were taken of the general area here.
And everybody gets trained. The troops on the ground,
right,
the pilots, the photographers, and then the photographer interpreters.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a huge operation.
Yeah, it was. It was a huge operation. So here's another thing, and this just talks about Vernon Castle. I'll let Garry get a close-up of that so you can read it, and we'll just kind of stay on it, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But this is about Vernon Castle when he married Irene, and talks about their professional career as dancers and the dances that they brought here. I mean, these people were like any of the rock stars of the day in terms of being dancers, ballroom dancers, modern dancing in 1914. And it talks a little bit about him being a fighter pilot, what he did, being here as the commander of the 84th Canadian Training Squadron of the Royal Flying Corps, and then a little bit about what took place after that. Now, he was buried in New York, and at the time of his death, there was essentially a memorial and funeral that was taken here. But what they did is they took his body to the train station. Now, we also talked about Ormer Locklear when he was killed in the 20s, that there were 50,000 people showed up for his funeral, and he is buried in Fort Worth. But with Vernon Castle, again, they estimate that there were at least 50,000 people who lined the streets
here in Fort Worth.
As the body was taken to the train, and then he went up. He was taken up to.
On an important safety note,
yes,
for the fighter pilots among us, it's an important safety note to know that his wife, who absolutely loved him, decided that it would be appropriate for her to have a sculpture made of her kind of kneeling in a very remorse and very sad appearance, and she did it nude. So, you know, dadgummit, that's a wife. So we're as fighter pilots, we're like, yeah, we're done. Oh, okay, we'll get back to your stuff.
So he is mentioned. We've been over to the Royal Flying Corps Cemetery. Vernon's name is on the memorial there because he was one of the 39 who were killed here in Fort Worth during the training process. But this is just a little bit of a story now. Irene stayed here in Fort Worth for quite a while afterwards. She was known here and actually did some stage appearances and things like that.
And the movie about him starred Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
Exactly. There is a movie, and in fact, the name of the movie is...
So I'm going to go get it and rent
right
it
here.
or whatever, download it.
It's The Story of Vernon and Irene Castle. It's available online, and I know you can get a DVD of it. I'm not certain whether you can stream it.
Just as Fred Astaire, holy cow, Ginger Rogers,
it was Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers who played Irene and
that would be appropriate.
Irene and Vernon Castle, and it talks about the entire thing, including the part about him being a pilot here and being killed here. So it's kind of interesting from that standpoint. So I don't know if Garry can see the screen and see any questions. We will pick those up later.
Or here, I'll just switch.
Okay.
Out.
Well, we're going to just switch out.
And then I'll look at, and then you can look. I'll have this. You can take this thing right here.
We can look at Garry.
Yeah, we can look at Garry. What was that other picture that I?
Let's see. I'm trying to see here.
Because the sun is right there.
Yeah, the sun is right on the screen.
It's
so
just tough to see.
Really very difficult.
Oh, this is the one. Okay, this is there north. That's the map.
This is the training. This is the training area of the 3 fields. You see where
Fort
Worth's in the middle, and Hicks is up at the top with the target range, and then field number 3 or Tolliver number 3 is here in Benbrook, and field number 2 or Tolliver 2 is down off of Everman Parkway. And we're going to go ahead and do one of these. We'll do a visit out to Everman because there is still an ammunition bunker there that also has a very interesting history about how it was used after the war. So I think for now, since we can't read the questions,
there's too much sunlight.
Too much sunlight on the screen.
As opposed to snow.
As opposed to snow, yes.
And ice.
We hope all of you did a pretty fair job of surviving last week and all of the issues that took place. We will continue these. We're going to do one Saturday. We've got some great news, and that yesterday we recovered an OH-58 from the base here, and so we have a replacement for our Kiowa for Kids, and we'll probably do a walk around with that and talk about what we're going to do with that on Saturday. So for now, from Benbrook at the corner of West Cosby Street and Vernon Castle Avenue, this is Jim Hodgson and Garry Goff.
See ya.
Fort Worth Aviation Museum. Thanks for being with us today, and have a good week.